Don't cry because it's over, smile because it happened. If there's one series that I feel this quote represents the most, it's the Mother series. While the franchise did die a premature death, what we did get is great enough on its own, and at least the series didn't get milked to death like a lot of other games. We really are lucky to have gotten what we did. The series could have been cancelled after the first game. Earthbound was almost cancelled a few times, but the release of Mother 3 was a miracle on its own. Development started not long after Mother 2 came out. Originally, it was gonna be an SNES game as well. However, with the launch of Nintendo's new console, the N64, it wouldn't be long before development switched over to it. Development would switch over yet again, from the regular cartridge format to the Nintendo 64 DD. This would allow it to utilize the add-on features, but we all know how that thing went. So once again, development switched over, back to the regular cartridge. The game then began to go through development hell, and in 2000, the game was outright cancelled. Yet, executives at Nintendo thought it was wasteful to let such a great project in their eyes go to waste. Iwata thought about porting it to the GameCube. In the end though, Mother 3 would pick back up development again in 2003, this time for the GBA. The game wouldn't come out until 2006, a whole 12 years after Mother 2, and a whole year and a half after the DS came out, the GBA's successor. This, along with the failure of Earthbound in North America, led executives to believe that an international release and translation wouldn't make the money back it would take to produce. To this day, there has not been an official English translation of it. The key word is official. In 2008, a fan-made translation would be released by Tomato, being one of the greatest fan translations of all time. I have a special relationship with this game overall. I don't want to go into too much detail for now, but let's just say it hits a little too close to home for me. Without further ado, let's dig in and see how good it is. To begin, the title screen is kind of meh compared to Mother 1 and Earthbound. There's no attract mode or shining logo, and the music is mediocre at best. In line with the rest of the series, it's time to name stuff. The main cast this time revolves around a family of 4. There's the twins, the timid Lucas and the energetic Klaus, the dad Flint, the mother Hinawa, and the family dog Boney. Once again, the player gets to name their favorite thing and food too, so all you immature viewers can ruin the immersion in the story by having the cast eat shit instead of omelets, if you really want to. The world of Mother 3 heavily deviates from the modern-day American-like setting to a more primitive one. In a place called the Nowhere Islands, Lucas begins his journey, awakening from his slumber in his grandfather's cabin. His mother is just downstairs, and I have to say that they got the attitude down perfectly for her. She reminds me so much of my own mom. Outside, his grandpa and bro have been playing with Dragos, dinosaur-like creatures, but harmless. I'm envious. A mole cricket comes along and engages the twins in the first battle, which is a pretty easy tutorial battle. The cricket mentions something about a tournament or something, and then runs off. Hinawa makes some omelets, a good time is had by all, and her and the kids head back home. The end. What a great game. What's this though? A strange, UFO-like object in the sky. What could this be? That very night, a series of explosions take place in the forest. Weird men in pig masks set off these super bombs, which sets the whole forest on fire. The local town crier Thomas runs at top speed to get the help of the town's toughest man, as well as the father of the twins, Flint. The two then set off, but the player can explore around the village, Tazmily, if they so wish. Tazmily is a tight-knit community, full of different villagers with distinct personalities. It almost feels like an Animal Crossing game or Harvest Moon game, to be honest, with how much different dialogue they have. One villager, Lighter, and his son Feeble live deep in the forest. As such, Flint treks through to see if they're alright. On the way there, they see another pig-masked soldier, this time creating these weird bug things. More and more questions pop up by the minute. The player starts getting into fights from here, and it becomes apparent right away how much has been refined from Earthbound. Enemies now have back sprites when snuck up from behind. Characters now have their own sprites that pop up during their turn by their HP bar. The visual presentation has had a huge boost too. Flint is a much different character than Ness or Nintendo or really anyone. He can't use PSI like they can, or special weapons like Jeffrey Lloyd. What he does have are his muscles. Flint can use a number of moves that cost nothing to use, like Power Smash, an attack with low accuracy, but if it does hit, it does insane damage. He can swing, which attacks multiple foes at the same time, alongside Toughen Up and Strengthen Up, to raise his defense and attack a little bit. Oh, and like Porky/Pokey, Thomas is completely useless in battle. Lighter is found severely injured outside of his house, unable to rescue his son. Flint barges in and manages to save him. At least Fuel is more useful than Thomas. Funnily enough, being able to deal the final blow on a few enemies. The two of them are taken back to town to be treated for injuries. Luckily, a downpour begins, stopping the forest fire. However, Flint's family still hasn't come home yet, so the villagers come together, they make a search party and go look for them in the dead of night. One villager mentions hearing what could have been a scream in the area. A family dog, Boney, comes along with Flint to search as well. An elderly man by the name of Wes says he has some useful skills as well, but no one will let him help. A piece of cloth, resembling Hinawa's dress, is spotted near a cliff face. Wes sends for his son, Duster, to come help. Duster has mastered a secret art, the art of holding what must be a dozen giant staples in his pockets, and implanting them secure enough into the wall to serve as a ladder basically. The trio see those same pig-masked men from earlier, only this time they've got an ace up their sleeve. A hybrid of machine and caribou, which overall is pretty tame compared to whatever the hell the enemies are later on. The mysterious men once again get away, but Flint has more pressing concerns. His boys have been found washed up nearby. They seem traumatized, not mentioning what happened to their mother. Soon after, Bronson comes onto the scene with terrible news. He found the fang of a Drago lodged into Hinawa's heart. Flint has nothing short of a mental breakdown hearing this news, blaming himself for not going with them or not searching sooner. He even goes so far to harm other villagers trying to calm him down, before Lighter sneaks attack him with a 2x4. Flint awakens in jail, well sort of. While he gets locked into a cell, with the help of Klaus he escapes, but no one seems to care. To be fair, he did just have his wife die. All the people of Tazmily gather for her funeral. This event is such a big deal. Up to this point, the people of the town knew nothing but peace. Even the deepest parts of the woods were seen as safe enough for a child to venture through by themselves. Every word from nearly every NPC's mouth at the funeral is something you could very easily imagine a real-life person saying to you after a loved one has passed away. There is a time and place for humor, and I'm glad that this moment, with the exception of the whole bad news, good news spiel Bronson gives, is treated with complete seriousness. Although someone seems to be missing, Klaus. Lucas confesses that Klaus went up to the mountains to avenge his mom with a homemade knife, while he did nothing to stop him. Alec is a bit harsh to Lucas regarding this fact. Calling your own grandkid a fool is not the most stand-up thing to do. Story-wise, Flint needs to go up to the mountains to stop Klaus from endangering his life, but the player can spend some time exploring Tazmily. There is no currency system yet, There is still an item shop, however, where everything is free for the taking. Nuts can be found in the overworld. If taken to Caroline, she can use them to bake nut cookies or bread for free. Even the hotel is free. It sure is nice to not have a game that reminds you of the daily grind of the real world. Flint gets the Drago Fang back from Bronson, intending to use it to pierce the skin of the rabid Drago. He and Alec then make a quick stop to see one of the latter's friends for advice, the Mad Gypsies. Being incomprehensible to humans, they never age or conform to human norms, and for some reason a lot of them are named after regions of ancient Anatolia. Aeolia mentions that they did see Klaus earlier, and taught him an unnamed powerful PSI move, the first mention of it in a story. Vinny ran off to attempt to kill the Drago. Flynn and Alec keep pursuing for Klaus. They go through a cave, where Alec is a bit more of a jokester than you'd expect, having his daughter die like a day ago. Maybe it's his coping mechanism, hopefully it is. After a long trek, well by long I mean like 15 minutes, the two finally see what looks like Klaus's shoes. A second later, a lot of questions get answered. Whatever killed Hinawa was not a normal Drago. Someone has been replacing parts of animals' bodies with machinery. The following battle is one of the most awesome in the game. Imagine the rage Flint feels inside right now, seeing this thing in front of him that not only killed his wife, but possibly his son too. Be sure to use that Drago's Fang, or else it's impossible to win. Overall though, it's a pretty easy fight. Just brace yourself, bring some items and bash away. In one last bit of rage, the Mecha Drago deals mortal damage to Flint. Then the battle's over. It would suck if you had like 1 HP left and then you died because of this. The Drago's child comes to try to rescue it, only it's too late. In a twist of fate, this baby Drago is suffering just as much as Lucas and Klaus. Speaking of Klaus, the camera pans over to what appears to be him, or maybe his dead body. Chapter 2 begins on a completely different note, focusing not on Flint, but Duster. Wes has been training his son, in case what's happened now just so happened to happen. In the nearby Oso Castle lies a very important item for Duster to retrieve. What kind of item? Well, Wes doesn't say. I'm sure that won't lead to any confusion. Lastly, Duster is given 5 special thief tools to help him on his way. It is now nighttime outside. I love it when it's nighttime in games. Same with rain, it's so atmospheric. The only downside is all the shops are closed. On the way to the cemetery, Duster runs into a weird guy with a monkey that seems reluctant to follow him. He apparently traded one of the villagers their pigs for something called money, which he hides in the local well. All of this is foreshadowing something big in the next chapter, but for now, Duster heads into the graveyard, full of zombies, zombie dogs, and living gravestones. Not exactly the best place to bury Hinawa. In fact, some speculate that one of these zombies is actually Hinawa, although it's somewhat disproven later on in the game with what happens. Before I forget, let's talk about Duster in battle. He's kind of like Jeffrey Lloyd, yet still incredibly different. He's one of the stronger characters stat-wise, he's not quite on Flint's level of OP, but still pretty decent. His thief tools can be used forever. The wall staples immobilizes a foe for a turn or two. The Siren Beetle turns him around, exposing weak points. His Hypnopendulum is basically hypnosis. His Scary Mask lowers offense, his Tickle Feather lowers defense, and a Smoke Bomb lowers the chance of enemies' attacks hitting. I really like how some are kind of realistic, like the Smoke Bomb, and then you just have ridiculous ones like the Tickle Feather. Duster has a few other neat tricks in battle as well, although I'm not going to mention them because I know for a fact that I probably did not have any of them during this part of the game when in Chapter 2 when it's just Duster, and also I know that the future me that's gonna be editing this is gonna hate me, so you just have to use your imagination. With the drawbridge up, Duster has to use every skill he's learned to enter it, from venturing through a secret passageway to once again using his magic staple technique to scale the castle walls. The caretaker seems to know a lot about the living dead, yet doesn't feel the need to tell anyone or get help. Once again, the curators of cemeteries in the other games have balls, I'll say that. Oso Castle has gotta be my favorite area in the whole game, with maybe a few exceptions. Well, it doesn't unnerve me at all, like, the cemetery, or Poduk Cemetery in Mother 1, or the Cave of the Past. The atmosphere and aesthetic are still awesome. The creepy paintings, the slightly unsettling yet not terrifying music, the aged look, and all the ghosts. Some ghosts are enemies, while others are helpful, acting as shopkeepers, irregular NPCs, most of which are throwing a great party in the dining hall. I love it when ghosts aren't the bad guys. I do wonder how it got here if the lore of it gets revealed later on though. Sometimes, ghosts drop rotten eclairs, items a Duster can't eat. Instead, they act as currency. I have to give a toy credit for managing to work a traditional barter economy into a game, and have it work so well. The most important item to get is a rope snake. Now, a toy could have just had this be like a regular grapple hook, or like a hook shot or something. It's used to get across ledges. Yet, this is the Mother franchise, and what we got instead is a talking, living, breathing character to be our grapple hook. I do feel a bit sorry for it though, having to stay in Duster's pants all the time. That must suck. Oso Castle has a lot of optional bosses, I must say, from a crazed painting to a glob of jelly to a knight's armor. Near one staircase in particular, what looks like a teenage girl jumps from the ceiling and runs off, leaving behind her pendant. Strange, but there's bigger fish to fry for now, like the stage boss, Lord Passion. It's advised to use Duster's thief tools for this battle. Lower his offense, his defense, his accuracy, whatever you need to, because his combo attacks can be deadly. I was a little over leveled, I used Duster's thief tools to my advantage, and I still went for like half a dozen beef jerkies. In the room beyond is what appears to be the item Duster was sent to collect, the noble spittoon. I don't know what was once with the royal family's spit, but I'm not one to judge. Well, maybe I should be, since Wes has a meltdown the minute Duster brings it to him. I shouldn't find his outburst towards his own son funny. I really shouldn't, but I'm ashamed to admit that I always laughed during this part. It wasn't a complete loss at least. Wes recognizes the pendant Duster found. It belongs to the Princess of Oso. This time, Wes comes along with Duster. However, those same strange men from earlier come back in even greater numbers. They ransack the castle, to the point of where the ghosts go into hiding, which is impressive, I have to admit. In battle, Wes isn't a regular party member, rather one of those temporary, uncontrollable ones without a health bar. In spite of that, Wes might be the best temporary party member in a series after Eve. He can do all kinds of cool stuff. Thunder bombs, special thief art attacks, or throwing Duster's dirty socks at enemies. A fate that I'd wish on nobody. The room where Duster found the spittoon is where he went wrong. See these carvings? Well, he was supposed to do a special dance to open the door. Wes decides to be the one to do it instead, giving us one of the funniest cutscenes in gaming. Wes tells Duster to look away, then he starts shaking his ass to the beat, and damn can he sway those hips. He's got... okay, I wrote something else down, but I'm not gonna say that, because it's cringe. Duster even decides to have a look against his better judgment, and even though he seems a little traumatized, he keeps watching his dad twerk. What the actual fuck? Beyond the doors, the two run into the princess, Kumatora. While Paula was my middle school crush, she was my high school crush. she heavily deviates from the regular, feminine, frying pan wielding, pink dress wearing girly girls of Anna and Paula. Kumatora is a teenage, sailor mouth tomboy. She's also the first PSI user you get to play as. Not only can she learn PK Freeze, Fire, and Thunder, but also Life Up to Heal. She's a lot more versatile than Paula, although not as OP in the psychic field as Anna. Yet she's the best of the three overall, since she has way higher offense and other stats than the both of them. Once again, she was my high school crush, and if you look at some of my older videos I made back when I was 16, I mentioned over and over again how hot I thought she was, and it's kind of embarrassing. My younger self's embarrassing moments aside, the trio finally find what they've been seeking, the Hummingbird's Egg, a mystical item containing forbidden knowledge of what to do in these hard times. The pig masks are right outside the room, so Kumatora prematurely snatches it before Wes can tell her about the booby traps. The three fall into the lowest part of the castle, its dungeon, full of water, and the Loch Ness Monster. Unlike Tessie, this one is not so happy to see them. The boss fight against it is fairly easy despite its abundance of HP, since PK Thunder does insane damage to it. There aren't any healing points right before it though, so Kumatora may be low on PP. Even so, Wes can be just as useful. Following victory, the water drains from the cavern, washing the trio downstream. Kumatora and Wes are found by Fuel. Duster meanwhile is missing. Also, Lighter thinks that the two are a couple, which is kind of creepy considering Kumatora's like 15 here. It makes you wonder what goes on in his head. I sense some projection going on there. The money that Butch hid is gone, leading him to believe that Duster was the one who stole it. Flint comes in and actually talks. Basically in this game, whoever is the main character is the silent one. Anyway, Flint calms the situation down, and the townsfolk wait for Duster to return, ending the second chapter. It's hard to believe that the game is already a quarter of the way done. Nonetheless, Chapter 3 is mine and most people's least favorite chapter. It starts with the pig masks capturing two monkeys. A mysterious peddler Facade forces the male monkey Salsa to do whatever he asks under threat of his girlfriend's life. For extra insurance, Facade places a shock collar on Salsa, and oh boy does he not use it sparingly. The two then trek through the desert to get to their destination. Salsa frankly sucks as a playable character. He has low stats, and while he does have some neat special skills to distract foes and the like, he's overall the least fun character to play as. Most of the time, Facade is the only one actually doing damage to enemies. This might be the only non-playable character massively stronger than a playable one, with the exception of Eve. Getting stronger doesn't take all that long. Certain enemies drop dung, which you can give to this beetle by the Oasis to gain free XP to level up even quicker. Once through the desert, you go through this underground tunnel and exit out a secret passageway in the graveyard. On the way out, the two run into Duster when he was headed for Oso Castle. I just think it's neat that we play from different characters' point of view of the same events. Also, Facade is actually the one who steals Butch's money. Now, you might be asking, if Facade is so strong and the like, why the heck does he need Salsa? Well, to be his mascot basically, to sell something to the people of Tazmily, happy boxes. He says a lot of other ludicrous stuff as well, like how lightning is gonna rain down from the sky on a daily basis. I mean, that's never gonna happen. Right? In any case, it's up to Salsa to deliver everyone's happy boxes, and for the first time, the player gets to play as Salsa alone. And while I hate Facade for being an abusive maniac, he did come in handy during battles. Facade made a promise to Salsa that he'd give him a luxury banana if he can deliver every package in under 23 minutes. Doing so is easy, and I mean easy, but when you come back, he gaslights Salsa and then zaps him again. The next day, the two head for Oso Castle, around the same time that Duster, Wes, and Kumatora were meddling around. Salsa does the dance like Wes, to enter a new secret chamber in the castle. I have to admit that this time, it's not as funny. Facade is the one behind the water drainage after the Oso Castle snake fight. Basically, had he done nothing, they probably would have died, so he has no one to blame but himself for their escape. To be fair to him though, the pig masks are incompetent and argue with each other all the time, which delays their pursuit even more. When the two return to town, they arrive right in the middle of that fight at the end of chapter 2, and Facade uses this opportunity to just spew more propaganda. Kumatora, when she sees Salsa, does something strange. What I find the most disturbing about this whole chapter is how nice Facade appears on the surface, promising to give Salsa lots of luxury bananas. I mean, I get it given his name, Facade. It kind of makes you think how often this happens in real life. An answer to that is a lot. When the two spend the night in the inn again, Kumatora and Wes break into the room to rescue Salsa. When Kumatora did her weird thing from earlier, she was actually reading his mind. It's kind of unclear if every PSI user in Mother can read minds, but this implies so. Wes steals the remote when Facade is asleep, freeing Salsa from his slavery once and for all. Wes must not have been that careful though, because Facade gathers his men and launches a full assault on the Free just a few moments later. The Free flee into the forest, where they get cornered by the enemy's tanks. You know, imagine how terrifying it would be for the people of Tazmily to see tanks if they've never seen or heard of them before. I mean, you hear all these stories in World War I about how terrified soldiers were when they first were starting to be used. I mean, I can only imagine how much worse it must be with characters who have never seen pretty much any modern technology. One tank alone is a whole boss fight. It's around here, but you realize just how hard Mother games are without an offensive tank like NES or Nintendo. The tank is weak to thunder, but when Kumatora is out of PP and Salsa's out of attack items, this thing takes forever to beat. Ironically, Wes wasting turns worrying about Kumatora's safety instead of, using thunder bombs or secret art techniques is what endangers her life even more. Luckily for me, in the last phase of the fight, the tank can't really do all that much, yet it took me like a dozen turns of bashing to take it out. The trio, barely managed to take one tank out, but Facade's division isn't close to being worn out. The pig masks surround them, when something unexpected happens next. The kid you played as for 5 minutes in chapter 1 walks by. How can some random kid who does 2 damage to a mole cricket help us now? Using his friendship with the Dragos, Lucas saves the group. We see the same baby Drago that was the Mecha Drago's child, and I like to believe that this one is its partner, or was its partner because, it's dead now. That's kind of depressing. This scene is so satisfying to watch. I mean, there are moments in games like this that I love, where the tide turns, but this one is among my favorites. For some reason, I find them hilarious to watch. Maybe it's just the anticipation of it. The dragon taking them on one by one, and how Facade begs for mercy before being launched halfway across the galaxy. Wes informs Lucas on the situation, and thank God the player doesn't have to hear all of it all over again. Lucas is tasked to help around Tazmily Village, while Kumatora goes off to help Salsa get home and look for Duster. As Chapter 3 comes to its end, the story of Flint, Duster, and Salsa come to their ends, and the story of Lucas begins. Then we get what might be the most beautiful cutscene in a video game. 3 years have passed, and both Tazmily and Lucas have completely changed. The village has become a fully industrialized modern city on par with Onnet or Podunk, while Lucas has grown up, becoming a young teenager now. All his hardships, all his suffering, all his loss has made him into a stronger person. While I do appreciate Smash for introducing the Mother series to so many, I have issues with its portrayal of Lucas somewhat. Lucas is not a crybaby, at least not for most of the time you play as him. He's older, more resilient, and stronger in my opinion than most people make him out to be. If there's one character that I could use to get my point across, it would be Kid Link from Ocarina of Time. I imagine Lucas not to be whiny or shy, but stoic like his dad, although that could just be because of him being the main character now and being silent. I really hate how so many people think that Lucas is a total pussy. He barely even shows much emotion or weakness from this point on, and when he does, it's from trauma or events that'll cause pretty much any sane person to break down. I feel like a toy wrote Lucas's story perfectly. I love how he's almost forgettable or insignificant early on. If a player didn't play as him in the first few minutes, we might have entirely forgotten about him. So many characters underestimate him, forget about him, etc. But now it's time for him to take the torch of the main character, and for the weakest to become the strongest. Lucas's house has been repeatedly struck with lightning, just like Facade had predicted years before. His only real companion is his dog Boney, as Flynn has lost it mentally, doing nothing but searching for his lost son. So much that he forgets about the son he still has. Exploring around Tazmily again, it's not just the standards of living that have changed, but the people as well. Nearly every former villager spends their days watching their happy boxes or working at the nearby factory. That warm, cozy, Animal Crossing-like feel the town had before is just gone, replaced with snobbiness. Facade basically owns the place now, and whoever stands up to him gets dealt with. By the train station, Lucas overhears some of the guys talking about a musician who looks like Duster at a place called Club Titty Boo. With a name like that, who wouldn't want to go there? Lucas tells Wes about it at his old house, which the pig masks have turned into a nursing home, and not a very high quality one at that. Wes asks for Lucas to go check out the place, to look for Duster, so he and Boney set off. The two go for this cave, which a train goes through and almost kills them to get there. Along the way, they run into Ionia, one of the mad gypsies. They can feel loads of psychic power emanating from Lucas, power that he has no clue about, power that needs awakened. The method of awakening is a little disturbing, and honestly, maybe one of the reasons why Nintendo doesn't really like this game all that much. Lucas then learns PSI, and depending on your level, he'll learn quite a bit. Most importantly, he learns PK Love Alpha, an incredibly powerful move, capable of doing over 100 damage to all enemies. Some of these enemies on the route are incredibly strong, but worst of all are these cattle snakes. They do a lot of damage, and the only way to beat them is by spamming PK Love. I wouldn't recommend fighting them, to be honest. I mean, they mind their own business and such. If cattle snakes seem weird, most of the enemies around here are Frankenstein abominations too, like sliverheads or pictunias, and these man-made horrors are only gonna get worse and more bizarre as time goes on. To enter the club, Lucas has to work at the factory for a bit, helping Clayman get their batteries recharged and all that. It's kind of relaxing in a way, yet kind of a downgrade from the era before, since you just started to be able to use PSI again and now you can't. At the entrance to Club Titty Boo, the bouncers don't let Lucas and Boney in for being underage, and a dog respectively. Boney tries to wear a disguise, but that still doesn't work. Luckily, a waitress covers for the two so they can get inside. She's actually Kumatora, and she has a plan. Duster, indeed, has become one of the band members of the hit group DCMC, going by Lucky now. After the show, Kumatora leads the two into a secret chamber, leading to her private chambers. Lucas just about walks in on her in the shower, and she doesn't really seem to notice or care or anything. What she does freak out about though is if you keep saying no to her when she asks you to take a shower, she'll eventually lose her temper, which I always thought was hilarious. The three get caught up with the status quo, while an acid trip similar to the coffee or tea sequence from Earthbound plays in the background. Kumatora goes to gather the members of DCMC together to meet with Lucas, while he and Boney have to go through the attic. While the dungeon itself is decent, the music is fantastic, seriously. They did not have to go so hard on an area that maybe lasts like half an hour at most, and that's what I love about the Mother games. A weird thing happened to me here though. Whenever I tried to pull up the map, the game would just freeze on me. I tried looking it up online and I just could not find anyone else that had a similar experience, so I'm gonna assume that the repro card I bought is somewhat faulty, and I just really was hoping that I'd be able to finish the game without it crashing at crucial moments or erasing my save data. I mean, I had beginnings crash on me a few times while I played that in April, so my luck with reliable repro cards this year is pretty bad. But yeah, I managed to beat the game, thankfully, or else I wouldn't really be making this video. The boss of this place is the old bass the band used to use, but oh my word, is this a difficult boss. The only way to win is to either spam PK Love like crazy along with other items or grind for an hour. I did the former and I used so many PK Loves that Lucas ran out of PP. So I had to use all of the scarce PP restoring items to restore some, and even then I just barely won the battle. I do have to admit though, while it was kind of frustrating, I did have some fun having such a close battle like that for once. The reason why Duster hasn't returned in so long is because of his memory being wiped after touching the egg. Duster is torn on whether he should go with the group or stay with the band. DCMC's leader, OJ, convinces Duster to put his dilemma in the hands of Destiny, and the best way to listen to Destiny is to play rock, paper, scissors. If Lucas manages to beat all 5 of them, he'll go with them, but if he loses just once, he'll stay. Thankfully, it's impossible to lose. If you pick the losing option, they'll say they did something wrong and allow you to redo it. Once beaten, the DCMC have no choice but to let Duster go with the group to help on their mission. On the way out, an emotional flashback of Duster, remembering how he got there plays, meeting them, etc. The band plays one last song for his parting, and Duster even gives up his awesome afro covering his receding hairline. Tragic. Now that the gang's finally all together, it's time for that part of the video, where I take a break from the story to cover the gameplay. Let's begin with what might be the biggest new battle feature, the combo system. Each character has their own musical instrument that plays when they attack. Lucas has a guitar, Kumatora has an electric guitar, Duster a bass, etc. During battles, if you press A in a rhythm with the beat of the song, it begins a chain of smaller bashes to the enemy until you mess up or get 16 hits in. To be honest, I suck at comboing, so most of the time I just mash A and hope for the best. If you're good at it, getting good chain attacks can really help defeating enemies quicker, which in turn makes the game that much easier, if it wasn't easy enough already. Gone is the command menu of the previous titles. Simply pressing A acts as the check or talk command now. Pressing start pulls up a simpler options menu that leads to new menus for items, PSI, equips, or status. Running is much different than in a lot of other games like, let's say, Pokemon. Instead of holding down the B button and moving forward with the D-pad, you hold and then release B to start dashing. While dashing, you move forward in the direction you're facing without even touching the D-pad. Additionally, while dashing, using the D-pad can change the direction you're going. It's not bad after you get some time to get used to it, although I would be lying if I said I preferred it over, the simpler kind of direct control that games like Pokemon or the first Mother game had. Saving is no longer done through phones. This time it's from frogs. A lot of them appear throughout the world, a lot more than phones ever did, and they show up deep in dungeons or caves too. They bring a lot of humor to the mix, with not two frogs being the same. Save files show a lot more information about each playthrough now as well, such as playtime or the current party. What sucks is the downgrade in the number of save files. It fell from 3 to 2, in a title where the world changes now more than ever, with a lot of areas that can never be revisited without starting a new save. I understand that there's probably a reason why there's only 2 save slots, probably for memory space and stuff, yet it sucks. Save frogs can also be used to transfer the currency of Mother 3, DP. I cannot say that combination of letters with a straight face, I'm sorry. From chapter 4 and on, gone are the days where everything is free sadly. Everything except for healing, as hotels are gone, replaced by either free beds or hot springs. Ah yes, hot springs. One of my favorite things in RPGs. The soothing vibe of the warm water, the refreshing sensation of getting gunk off your skin. Just imagining that is enough to relax me. Hot springs are everywhere, from Oso Castle, to forests, to even the most obscure of locations. It is kinda weird, I admit, how everyone goes in together. Well, I mean, it's not like they get naked or anything, thank God. I doubt poor Lucas wants to see Duster's hairy ass, but it still feels a little intimate for a group like this. Occasionally, a random old man can show up in any of the hot springs, and I mean any. I almost remember shitting myself when he showed up in Oso Castle. I mean, who is he? Why does he feel the need to strip down and naked in the hot spring? Who knows? It's a mystery that'll never be solved, and I'm sure it is definitely on the top of Mother fans' radar. My favorite aspect of the hot springs has gotta be the music that plays. It's a calm track that I find really stress relieving. I go so far to place it in my top 10 most relaxing songs in gaming, it's that good. Item storage has been massively improved from Earthbound 2. Firstly, regular item space has been upgraded from 14 to 16, and on top of that, key items now have their own storage space. Now that is awesome. That was one of the big things that really took away from Earthbound, was just having to use the S-Cargo Express so often to store key items because you couldn't throw them away and didn't have their own item slot. Speaking of that, there is a way to store items in this game too, but instead of a mysterious goods keeper or the S-Cargo Express, it's these item guys who show up in multiple spots throughout the game, kind of like save frogs, and you can deposit and withdraw items from them. Overall, a massive improvement over Earthbound. The insta-win mechanic of defeating foes incredibly weak to the player was sort of brought back, albeit a bit inferior. Super weak foes can still be avoided if you run through them. The player just doesn't get any XP from them, and if you don't run through them, a battle will begin no matter what the level gap. Even so, I'm super glad that this mechanic was brought back in some way. It's so annoying in so many RPGs when you're exploring around the early game areas while being like level 50 or 80 or something, but still have to fight enemies that can be beaten with a single blow, and don't give out any worthwhile XP or items. When party members fall in battle, in the overworld, they no longer turn into ghosts. They just look kinda sleepy. A shame, with how cool everyone was as angels/ghosts. When someone is dead, running isn't possible, which in turn puts the player in even more danger, since you can't even run now and you have a harder time fleeing pursuing monsters. There's been something I've been dreading to talk about in this video. The reason why I have such a complicated relationship with Mother 3. Something that made me dislike it for so long, to the point of liking Mother 1 more, despite its superior qualities. I can relate to Lucas on so many levels because, well, I had my mom pass away during my childhood as well. I was a bit older than Lucas, I was in early high school, but it still devastated me just like it did him. From having a dad that was so devastated with the loss of his wife to the point of forgetting about you sometimes, to no one giving a damn about you, to having to learn to take care of yourself in such a short amount of time. The only difference is that I didn't have a brother go missing right after. It changes a person forever to go through the loss of a parent. My mom was by far the closest person to me. I was a fairly sheltered kid, to the point of me almost mentally being a few years younger than other people my age. But when she passed, I went through so much shit in my life, having to learn to cook and do laundry on my own, learning to drive to take me and my sister to school, and most of all, having that protective shield around me preventing me from seeing the messed up side of the world broken. It was all so much that I went from a 15-year-old with the mental capacity of a 12-year-old to a 16-year-old with the mental capacity of an 18-year-old. That's why I have such strong opinions of Lucas being weak, because I know how it affected me, and I didn't really have it as bad as he did. I would often cope with my mother's death in ways that I'm not proud of. I first started this YouTube channel only a few months after she passed, and if you look deep, you can see how my loss affected my content around the same time. I wanted to be cool, I wanted to be edgy, I didn't want to look like a weak, depressed teenager who was unsure of the world. That's part of the reason why I used a fake chain smoker voice, as well as the reason why I'd force so many sexual jokes in my videos. It was around 2021 or so when I finally started to be able to move on from her death. I'm finally back to being who I was for the most part. I really am tired of pretending to be someone I never was, as much as a lot of people enjoy the facade I put on in the past. I love my mom, she might have made mistakes, yet who doesn't? I feel really bad about how often I mentioned in past videos about how I couldn't watch or play certain things because she thought they were evil. Yeah, it sucked I couldn't play Pokemon, but she was a great mother and I really miss her. For a long time, Mother 3 hit way too close to me, like putting salt on an open wound. It even caused me to straight up dislike the game for years. Now though, it's been so long, and I'm so much older, that I think it's become more therapeutic now than anything else. My wounds have healed, and what I see now is a game that I can relate to, that tells me that I'm not alone. There were moments, such as the part where Lucas grows up, that I actually began to cry, and I'm usually not a very emotional person. I'd say my opinions of Mother 3 have changed massively this playthrough. Before, I probably wouldn't have put this game on my top 10 favorite games of all time list, but now I may place it in my top 5 favorite games of all time. I like it more than Mother 1 after this, that's for sure. I apologize for kind of dumping my trauma on you. I've just held on to it for so long, and I just felt the need to get it off my chest. Returning to the story, Duster does remember where he left the egg, in a clayman inside a hole behind the lift to the concert building. But these moles have dug up loads of new holes. Then when the four find the clayman, it gets struck by lightning and starts running all over the place. When the group runs into the pig masks again, they seem to recognize Lucas, but they think that he's their commander. That's strange, right? In any case, whoever the real commander is must be ruthless, with how skittish they are around Lucas, and how they give the group everything they need to progress. The Clayman gets into a garbage truck headed for the dump, so your truck continues there, through highways, road tunnels, and truck stops. You do get to ride around in a pork bean for a while at the very least, which is pretty fun. On the way there, that giant pig guy from the DCMC concert runs into the group. He's the only soldier to realize that Lucas cannot be the commander and fights them. When you finally track down the Clayman and take down yet another boss, the egg is finally in the hero's possession once again. Duster's memory is restored, but other than that, the egg does absolutely nothing for the rest of the story, kind of like the GS ball from the Pokemon anime. The next objective is to decommission the Thunder Tower, the source of all the lightning strikes on people's houses. For a while, Lucas is still able to pass as the Pigmask commander, but then Facade comes along and ruins everything. The only place left to run is higher up the tower. Not exactly the best long-term plan, but alright. One of the most unintentionally funny moments in the whole series happens right before the climax. A massive discharge bolt hits Lucas, burning him to a crisp, and Lucas's friends don't really say all that much except for Duster, and all he does is nonchalantly ask Lucas if he's alright. Then Lucas learns PK Flash, and just continues about his day like nothing happened. Why on earth do people still think he's a weakling? Like, the kid got pumped full of 8,000 bolts, and barely flinched. He doesn't cry, he doesn't even care. He doesn't even give a shit that the rest of the gang just stood there with blank expressions while he got roasted like a Thanksgiving turkey. Be more like Lucas, guys. Also on the way up is this strange room, full of objects from Earthbound. Even though the gang is on the run, they still have time for a leisurely dip in the hot spring. A robot maid, Little Miss Marshmallow, attacks them if they try to take a yo-yo called the Friend's Yo-Yo, implying that it belongs to Ness, as well as foreshadowing who the big man at the top really is. Yet another boss was that make it like 5, including the second fight with the Pork Trooper, I forgot to mention. Anyway, one last chapter boss, Mr. Generator, stands in the player's way. While he's not as hard as a jealous bass, this fight can be tricky too. It's not often in Mother games where I almost get a game over. Its attacks can do tons of damage to the whole party, especially Boney, so I had him die me a few times here. The group climbs to the top, leaving no place left to go. Facade calls for reinforcements. However, his karma finally came to bite him in the ass. He trips on his own banana peel, slipping off to his certain death. There's no time to gloat though. Duster tries to use his rope snake to catch a ride on the Pigmask aircraft. All seems to go well at first. Then we see the real commander that these guys were talking about, a mysterious masked man. Before a battle can take place, however, the rope snake's jaw can no longer hold the weight of 3 people and a dog. Maybe gloating about Facade falling to his death wasn't such a smart move after all. When Lucas awakens, he's by himself, in a field of his mom's favorite flower, sunflowers. He walks around to find Boney. As he continues to walk, he sees someone he never thought he'd lay eyes on ever again. His mother. I admit, I actually did cry during this part. I'd give anything to see my mom again, even if it's just for a few moments. Hinawa keeps walking away from him. He follows her to a cliff edge. Yet he still jumps, trying to reach her, only to fall off once again. He and Boney are saved by Wes and Alec. In a dream Alec had, Hinawa told him to place a pile of leaves in that same spot, saving the two's lives. In contrast with Chapter 6, which was just that interactive cutscene with Hinawa, Chapter 7 is so long that it's basically half the game. I am not joking about that either. It starts with a familiar face, Iona. She was attacked by someone and sent downriver. She now worries about her friend Aeolia. When they get to her place, all seems to be fine at the moment, until a weird event takes place. Aeolia begins to disappear, mentioning something about her needle being pulled. Upon investigation, her needle was in fact pulled. Let me explain. Under the Nowhere Islands sleeps a great dragon with power to recreate the world. The dragon couldn't be controlled, so the Mad Gypsy's ancestors placed 7 needles on a dragon to put it to sleep, then let it lay below the islands. Only someone who is able to use PK Love can pull these needles, an extreme rarity. If a majority of these needles are pulled by someone, then a dragon will obey them, their will, for good or evil. Whoever it was that pulled this needle, however, has no heart at all. It's now the job of Lucas to stop this mysterious individual and pull the needles himself. The next area has gotta be another one of my favorites, the Chimera Lab. This would definitely be on my top 10 creepiest places in Earthbound if I were to make a video on that. It's a different type of horrifying compared to the Halloween type stuff that you normally see in creepy levels. When Lucas gets there, apparently the pig masks didn't get the memo of who he is, instead recognizing him as the Clayman Factory part-timer. The pig masks have been looking for Salsa, as he's the key to get past his weird wall, blocking a path further ahead. They all start looking for the monkey in the lab, as does the player. This is it, the center of the creation of all the abominations seen walking around. I can only imagine what kind of experiments or operations go on here. In some rooms, whole brains and nervous systems can be found preserved in jars. This has gotta be one of the most horrifying sights in a Nintendo game. Even more so if the brains are still conscious. That is a fate that I wish on nothing and no one. If you ever saw that one scene like RoboCop 2, you know what I'm talking about. The idea of brains being able to live without a body is a horrifying thought. I remember seeing some article in a college class I took that talked about how this is like pretty much impossible with the brain dying without stimulus or something. I mean, even so, I shudder to imagine a cruel fate like that. While looking for the monkeys, some of the chimeras escape, the worst being a big red one, the ultimate chimera. If you run into it, run. Do not touch it. If you do, it's an instant game over. It chases the player throughout the lab, and the game becomes more of a survival horror game than an RPG for a good couple of minutes. The tension is so thick that it can be cut with a knife. Never before is the player so defenseless against a foe. All your PSI, items, skills, they mean nothing here. Something else shows up here. Someone who makes the whole franchise's timeline much more complicated. Dr. Andonauts. What the heck is he doing here? Also, to add even more speculation, he hides in a garbage can, similar to Lloyd, causing some to speculate that Dr. Andonauts is Lloyd too, which makes the timeline that much more confusing. Salsa is finally found. He recognizes Lucas, then saves him, but Chimera unfortunately gets right back up after the group leaves. Salsa then joins the party for like 5 minutes, and as of this point, he's useless in battle, so I always forget about him here. Salsa dances to open the mysterious door. On the other side is Kumatora and another Mad Gypsy, Doria. After a quick side quest to drain the water from the pond, Lucas pulls Doria's needle. I feel sorry for Kumatora here. She was raised by the Mad Gypsies, and now all of them are gonna have to die to save the world. None of the Mad Gypsies are scared to die though, seeing it as their time. From pulling the needle, Lucas grows stronger, learning PK Love Beta. Salsa leaves the party to live with his girlfriend, and Kumatora rejoins the group. Remember that mole cricket from like the first 10 minutes of the game? Probably not, I guess. Well, it's time for a rematch. Well, the mole cricket at least took, quite a few blows the first time. This time he dies in one hit. Yeah, anticlimactic, I know. After a really confusing and tedious trek through the mole cricket's cave, you end up at Snowcat Mountain. Hear that music? It's the same song that plays in Snowman and Winters, one of the few songs to play in all 3 Mother games. It's such a nostalgic tune that makes me feel like a child again playing in the snow. Although, in my opinion, this version of the tune is my least favorite. It doesn't have that same mysterious, almost somewhat dark tone in that part of the song, the same way that all the other renditions do. At the mountain's peak is the next mad gypsy, Lydia. They're a very caring individual, caring for a wounded pig mask, despite them being the enemy, although they're also more reluctant about their fate. Lucas came too late, unfortunately, as that masked man from earlier has already pulled the needle. He doesn't fight Lucas directly, at least not yet. That honor goes to the steel mech-gorilla. Even though they're too late to make Lydia's death mean something, Lydia's life was able to change this pig mask, who now cares for the bunnies. Such a heartfelt moment and such a dark story. What I like about the needles compared to, let's say, the crystal stars or something, is the permanent nature of them. Once one is pulled, the other side can't undo it, which adds quite a bit of tension. The score right now is 2 on the pig mask side and 1 for Lucas, and 4 more still remain. Getting back home doesn't take long at least. Now, a toy could have had there be a guy with a sled who takes the group down or something of that nature, but instead, you ride a fridge down the slope. The chances of living after doing this are below 0, yet Lucas just goes along with it. If anything, he's more of a reckless idiot than a coward, to be honest. Next up, we have another throwback to the last adventure, Saturn Valley. This opens up a lot of questions. Is this the same Saturn Valley? How are they here? Although I'm glad they just came back, since they're fun characters. The pig masks have been torturing the Mr. Saturns by telling them scary stories. Truly the cruelest method of torture ever implemented. Duster is here too, and after taking care of the occupiers, he rejoins the party. The next needle lies close by in a volcano. It's around this point that I realized that I was really underleveled. For the first time since chapter 4, you're probably gonna have to at least grind a little bit every once in a while from here on out. The next needle belongs to Phrygia, a detail-oriented mad gypsy who sleeps excessively, not even being awake for your arrival. The stage boss is Facade. Yes, somehow he survived the fall from Thunder Tower, albeit not in the same state as the other 4. He can't even speak anymore, needing a translator. Quite a bit of Facade's body has been replaced by machinery, and now he has horns coming out of his nose. The horns in particular, I always found more disturbing than anything else for some reason. Despite all the evil he's done, I can't help but feel a little sorry for him. Being in a state like this is worse than dying. Once beaten, there is no one to stop Lucas from pulling the 4th and his 2nd needle, granting him PK Love Gamma. Also, Phrygia wakes up just in time to see it happen, then gives some more detail on where 2 of the 3 remaining needles are. One is in a place called Tain Island, while the other is at Iona's temple. Before taking care of that, however, I'd say it's time for another intermission. Back to the regular gameplay aspects. I've been holding off discussing PSI in detail for a while, so let's start with that. PK Love, like Rockin', is an incredibly overpowered attack, doing a crap ton of damage to every foe, with the trade-off of costing a crap ton of PP. The main difference of Love after the name and graphical differences is the amount of damage it does. The damage Rockin' does varies a lot more. At its peak, it does a lot more than Love, but its low point typically tends to be less than Love's. And the other major difference between the two is how they're learned, with Ness learning Rockin' with level ups, while Lucas learns Love through story events. Between the two, I like Rockin' a bit more. Not because it's better exactly, I just think it looks a lot cooler. Flash has been simplified from 4 variants to 1. This one variant is the equivalent to PK Flash Beta in Earthbound. It can still insta-kill, cause foes to cry, paralyze, or confuse, but its chance of an instant KO are somewhat low. PK Fire was done kind of dirty. It still remains a great move, just not the same as before. It doesn't do as much damage most of the time anymore, although it can burn enemies now. PK Freeze, like always, is the go-to offensive spell when attacking one foe. PK Thunder is a lot more useful now, hitting way more often, even more so against bosses. Starstorm comes back as well, being learned by Kumatora, albeit like Flash, it was simplified from 2 moves to 1. The only brand spanking new offensive PSI is PK Ground. Using it creates an earthquake, causing many blows of small damage, which each take away between 1 and 12% of the target's HP. Not only that, Ground can additionally trip them as well, taking away their turn. PK Ground makes every boss a near joke. However, the catch is how long it takes Kumatora to learn it. It's the final move she learns, and she doesn't learn it until level 60. It's entirely possible to beat the game without ever learning it. Plus, even if you do, it's usually not until right before the end of the game too. Another OP new move is Refresh. It gives the whole party a refreshing sensation, healing 10% of their max HP for every 5 turns. The kicker is yet again, the fact that it's not learned until almost level 60. The stat changers, Offense Up, along with Defense Down, return from Earthbound, while Defense Up returns from Beginnings. Another new move, Offense Down, was added too, although it's not that useful since Duster's Scary Mask does the same thing. Shields have been simplified. Instead of having the various types be named Beta or Sigma, they've been split into regular shields or counters. All of them are learned by Lucas too, making him possibly the best support PSI user in the series. I would say he's the strongest main character too, if he wasn't so much weaker than Ness stat-wise. Kumatora can learn some healing moves, Life Up to Beta, and Healing to Alpha, putting her above Paula, yet still below almost every other PSI user in that regard. Her assist moves are alright, I guess. Hypnosis isn't too useful, as once again, Duster can use his Hypno Pendulum to do the same thing for no PP. Paralysis and Brain Shock are slightly more useful. I just don't find myself ever using them since Kumatora is the party member doing most of the damage all the time, and I can't find myself justifying wasting a turn of hers to try using a move that might not even work. Especially since PK Flash can do all of that too. It's better to waste one of Lucas's turns than Kumatora's. Teleport was cut for some reason, unfortunately, which sucks a lot. I mean, I can kinda get why with how many areas aren't supposed to be revisited after the first visit, but come on. What does it hurt to come back to Saturn Valley right before the final boss? Like, does it really hurt anything? Admittedly, the world is a lot smaller and more interconnected than the past 2 games, making backtracking a little less painful. I still think that Teleport would have been a great addition though. A feature I'm a little torn on are PSI Fevers. When a certain level is reached for a PSI move to be learned, it isn't learned right away. Instead, after reaching a level and walking around a bit, Lucas or Kumatora get a fever. You can't run when either of them have one, and basically have to wait around for one of them to get over it. When they do, they learn a new move. It's kind of exciting anticipating a new move, but not being able to run is annoying, so I wish they would have just had it be like it was in Earthbound and you just learn it immediately after reaching a certain level. I already talked about Duster earlier, so let's talk about Boney. Boney doesn't have all that much going for him. He can sniff to learn enemies' weaknesses, but that's pretty much it. Stat-wise, he's not the best either, and he has very few equips. Overall, Boney is probably the least useful character besides maybe Salsa. However, a number of attack items have been added, from pencil rockets to super bombs to the shield snatcher. A lot of these emulate either Jeff or Lloyd's old items, but they can be used by anyone, which does give Duster or Boney something to do other than a normal attack during tough fights. A cool addition that makes creating a compilation video way easier is the battle memory. The book can be found in Oso Castle during Chapter 2. When used, the player can battle old enemies they faced off with before, even ones by salsa or flint. These enemies don't attack you, so it's not quite as cool as it could have been, yet it's still neat nonetheless. Even though Mother 3 is perfect as perfect can be, there are a few bad things about it, like any other game. The biggest flaw is the pacing. The chapters are wildly longer or shorter than each other. Chapter 1 is only about an hour or two. Chapter 2 is a little longer, Chapter 3 is a little shorter, Chapter 4 is like 2 hours, Chapter 5 is 2 or 3, Chapter 6 is a few minutes, and then Chapter 7 is like 8 hours long. But Mother games have a tendency to take a while to get good, and I feel like 3 is both the worst and least worst at the same time. It takes forever to get your overpowered PSI. Kumatora isn't a party member until Chapter 2, in which she can only use very weak PSI moves. On top of that, she's only a party member for maybe a third of Chapter 2, along with Chapter 3. In Chapter 4, Lucas finally does learn PSI, albeit his only offensive PSI attack is PK Love Alpha, and he doesn't learn that many supportive moves either. In Chapter 5, Kumatora joins the party again, and this is finally where she starts to learn stronger moves. But honestly, it's not until Chapter 7, the second to last one, where Lucas and Kumatora get most of their awesome skills. But while the pacing of levels and PSI may be slow early on, Chapter 7 goes by a little too quickly now. For instance, by the time PK Love Beta is learned, it's no longer even all that useful by this point, relative to the OP nature of Love Alpha or Love Omega. While the game might take a while to reach its zenith, at least the early game isn't bad per se. It's a lot more fun than in the previous entries for sure. It's not nearly as unfair, you can do a lot more than just bash, the story is engaging, etc. Plus, while I do admit not having PSI early on is a bummer, I wouldn't have it any other way. Lucas being a background character early on makes his role as main character that much more impactful later on. The whole game is a little too short as well. I never quite realized how short it was until now. The whole game is only around 25 or so hours, even less so on subsequent playthroughs. Now, RPGs don't need to be 40 hours long in my opinion. I really like my short games. So to be frank, the story being a little short doesn't really bother me all that much. What does bother me is what I was getting at while talking about teleport. How so much changes and there are tons and tons of areas that can never be revisited after a certain point. It's very easy to miss optional content because of this. The Shield Snatcher is the worst to miss out on. Or, there's a rematch with Lord Passion that can be missed unless he's fought in Chapter 5. Stuff like this really irritates me. As flawed as Beginnings is, at least there, you can return anywhere at any time. Podunk Cemetery, Rosemary Manor, and so on. So, why can't the player just come back to Taintain Island for instance after clearing it? Once again, what's the harm, even if there's not really much of a point? Sometimes, I enjoy playing an old save file of a game I haven't played for years for a few hours, exploring old areas for fun. Sometimes I do it to get in the mood if I want to start another playthrough of something. With Mother 3, I can't do that. Is this a huge issue? Depends. As an adult, I really don't do much other than the main story, unlike when I was a kid where I just spent hours in areas just for fun. Because of this, my opinion isn't as strong as it used to be. A more minor issue that is a pretty noticeable one is the audio. To be fair, this isn't quite the dev's fault entirely, rather a mix of factors, from the fan translation to the GBA sound capabilities. There's so many crackles, pops, and white noise, even tracks ripped from the files have this humming sound in the background. The problem has a lot to do with the GBA sound chip, since many other GBA titles have similar issues, and the fan translation makes the problem a little worse I hear. Thankfully, there are mods to fix this issue if it bothers you that much. Some elements in the story, such as the role of the hummingbird egg, could have been utilized better, but other than that, I honestly can't really think of that many more bad aspects of this game. As much as I would have hated to admit before, I'm having way more fun here than I did during my beginnings or my Earthbound playthroughs this year. Well, with practically everything else gone over, I think it's time to talk about what might be the greatest what if in the series. The original N64 version of Mother 3, it was fairly close to completion, around 80% done, and given more time, it actually would have been completed. There are two main reasons for its cancellation. One, the devs were unsure if they could get it done on time. Before the N64, it was no longer commercially relevant. The N64 died very quickly compared to nearly every other Nintendo console. Not a single first-party N64 game came out on the system after the launch of the GameCube. With the exception of Animal Crossing, no other first-party titles came out in 2001 in general, except for ones that are already released in other regions like Paper Mario. And to finish off, even third-party support died in 2001. The only exception is Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 2, which came out in 2002 on the N64 for whatever reason. My point is that the team didn't really have much time to finish development, maybe a year, and they're unsure if they could complete the game before then. On top of that, I'm somewhat doubtful that there would have even been a North American release had it come out, even if it did come out in Japan. But unlike Earthbound, a translation was in development during the rest of the title, similar to most modern games. Still, depending on the timetable, a North American release might not have come out until 2002, which if the case, I really doubt Nintendo would have bothered continuing it. The second reason why it was cancelled despite its progress was the massive resources Mother 3 was taking up. Around this time, Nintendo needed to put all their resources behind the GameCube. Cancelling Mother 3 would free up devs to work on titles like Melee, Wind Waker, or Luigi's Mansion. One of the big questions surrounding Earthbound 64 is whether or not it would have been better than the final GBA version we got. While graphically, I do prefer the sprite art of the GBA, there is a lot of content in the original version that had to be cut. The amount of chapters would have been 12 instead of 8. There is a morality system, and a way more immersive, detailed town. The story would have been a lot different too, taking place over a 10-year time span instead of just 3. Originally, Lucas was gonna be 7 pre-time skip, and 17 post-time skip. I kind of like the idea of Lucas being an older teen. Plus, this explains why some characters go through more growth in 3 years than makes sense. Lucas still looks like he's 7 pre-time skip, but afterwards he looks 13 to 14, or how Kumatora is referred to as an adult. Yet she was still young enough to grow a lot pre-time skip, which doesn't really make all that much sense considering most girls 15 or older grow maybe an inch or so after that. Even Duster in these early screenshots looks a lot more like a teenager than a grown man. The story was also meant to be a lot darker too, which I think would have been too much. When tragic or dark events take place in a story, each time they happen, there's a diminishing return on them. If the story was too dark, it may have taken away the impact of emotional scenes. Kinda like what happened with Fire Emblem Fates. Even though the initial plan was an extremely massive adventure, even by the end of Earthbound 64's development, a lot already was being scaled down. It's very possible that the unreleased N64 version would have been very similar to what we got on a GBA, only with a different shade of paint, and a more likely English translation. It's very possible that the original version would have been better, even in its later form, and probably I could have played it as a kid, since I owned an N64 and it would have actually been released in America. But I wouldn't risk trading what we ultimately got for what could have been. Like, let's say a Magic Genie offers to trade. I wouldn't take that risk. To get to Tain Tain Island, you have to do something never before seen in a series. You have to walk on the ocean floor. This would be a cool thing, if it wasn't for one mechanic. One stupid mechanic that ruins it all. The air meter. You only have half a minute or so before your oxygen depletes. If this happens, the player respawns back at Tazmily Beach, and you have to do it all over again from the beginning. To resupply an oxygen, the party has to basically make out with all these mermen throughout the seafloor. If Lucas wasn't traumatized enough already, well, now he has to deal with whatever trauma this will cause him too. At the end is a boss fight. All goes pretty well at first, until he's defeated. Despite the group, he creates a massive whirlpool, wiping them out. When they awaken on Tain Island, all of their items except for their equips are gone. Every character has 1 HP and 0 PP, and there's no way to leave. The only healing items that can be found are these weird mushrooms. A mushroom guy is blocking the path forward. He's fast, and has a move that hits the whole group, meaning this fight will always end in a game over. With no other choice, the 4 eat the weird mushrooms. Now in Earthbound, I joked a lot about how many acid trips there were, but this is a legit trip. This is a Nintendo game, where the main characters get high on shrooms and hallucinate. This sequence is kinda like a blend of Moonside with Magic Hand, although, unlike either of them, this one is about everyone's fears. Characters appear here, such as Klaus or Flint, but every single one are just hallucinations of enemies. The kinds of trauma surrounding the group hinted at here are super dark. From Lucas fearing his father beating him, blaming himself for what happened to his mom, for not saving Klaus, and so on. Kumatora has her own insecurities as well, like not living up to being a princess, or Duster's relationship with his dad. Then there's all the mailboxes, hiding disturbing secrets too. I love this place so much. It really goes to show the group's trauma in a way that doesn't feel forced or out of place, and a lot is left up to interpretation, such as Flint's line about beating Lucas up. Is it because he actually abuses Lucas, or is it from seeing his dad go crazy when Hinawa died in Chapter 1? Either way, I love it. There are tons of indie RPGs that have tried to replicate a similar theme of hidden trauma, but very few hit the mark the same way. Mixolodia of Island's Mad Gypsy is able to break the trance the group was in. With their senses back, there isn't much time to reach the next needle. There is a guardian protecting it this time too, the Barrier Trio, one of the hardest bosses in the series to be honest. It has so much freaking HP, it does so much damage, and in some forms, it's immune to most PSI. To beat it, grind until Lucas knows PSI counter, then attack, then heal until it's dead. To add even more frustration to this, your efforts are futile. The group hear the enemy coming, and instead of rushing to pull the needle, Lucas just sits there until the masked man comes by. One blow of a lightning bolt is enough to completely knock the group unconscious. Then he pulls the needle. The scorer is 3-2, and 2 needles are left. But if the other side pulls just one more, it's all over. Not the best odds. When a player returns to Tazmily, they find it almost completely abandoned. Very few people are still here, and the few that do are planning on leaving soon. Where did they all go? New Pork City. Throughout Chapter 7, you can hear various NPCs talking about the place, but still, to have a town this depopulated is unusual. Something more sinister has to be going on. The track playing is called And Then There Are None, a fitting title for it, conveying such a depressing feeling. I live in a pretty non-urban area, so I can kind of see similar events happening in small towns all across the state. All the industry, the young people, the money, they all move away to the big cities, leaving behind a virtual ghost town. However, now I'm starting to enter real-life politics, so let's move on. Ionia's temple is located near Sunshine Forest. through a cave route near to where Flint traveled to get to Dragon's Plateau in Chapter 1. There's a cave in between. There's not really all that much noteworthy about it, but for some odd reason, it always sticks out in my memory. And maybe it's because it's the last main area before everything amps up to 11, or how isolating it is, with almost no one around compared to any of the other chapters. And it doesn't have any of that industrial, modern aspect. Honestly, I don't know. Iona meets with the group one last time before they head to the temple, and gives them special water to be able to enter the temple. And Mr. Saturn shows up to give their group the Franklin badge. Yeah, I forgot to mention that a while ago the Gravekeeper gives Lucas a courage badge from Flint, and in Saturn Valley the Mr. Saturns take the badge to clean it, and now he just gave it back. My bad. It's really hard writing these scripts for these videos and also voicing them over. Also, after this point, you'll never be able to visit any other part of the island ever again, so saving to another slot might not be such a bad idea. Once again, the Masked Man shows up, but this time, the Franklin badge is able to deflect his lightning bolt, evening the playing field for a true battle. Like the Barrier Trio, this fight can be hard, if you're under-leveled at least. Thankfully, I grinded up quite a bit, trying to get some of the ultimate weapons, which I failed at, but at least now the rest of the game is going to be fairly easy. The Masked Man can use PK Love, which decimates the whole team. He can take away shields, he can attack twice in one turn. Just be prepared is all the advice I'm gonna give. After the fight, the man appears to have some malfunctions in the cybernetic part of him, so he flies off, and the pig masks follow. Inside the temple is the 6th needle, if I didn't make it clear enough already. Iona comes in to say her goodbyes to the 4. Kumatora is taught PK Starstorm. Lucas pulls the needle, learning PK Love Omega. As Iona disappears, they can sense the final forgotten mad gypsy, Lorcia, nearing the final needle, but they disappear before they can find out where it is. As luck would have it, the group don't need to search around, because 2 seconds after Chapter 7 ends, a limo driver pulls up. The 4 have been invited to New Pork City by none other than Porky, Ness's former friend, later turned enemy from Earthbound. There have been some hints up to this point, like in Chapter 5, just nothing conclusive until now. New Pork is a massive city, dwarfing practically any city in the Mother games in scale, at least lore-wise. Everyone is here, like even villagers that you'd assume would stay in Tazmily no matter what. Despite New Pork being a critique of what the modern world can lead to, I have to admit that I really like the city. Yes, I know that it's a pretty bad place to live, everyone here are sheep, they're greedy, all that, yet the aesthetic, the colors, all that is awesome. They really drive you in. Exploring around, there's not really all that much to do despite it being so big. There's an arcade with practically nothing to do except watch Lucas do whatever this is, and after that, there's a movie theater with a slideshow of pictures of Ness and his friends? Where are they? What happened to them? It's a mystery that persists to this day. Some think that Porky killed them, but I like to believe that they lived happy lives, and it wasn't until far in the future after they died that Porky enacted his evil plan. An even better question is, why on earth are these people just sitting here watching a slideshow of random kids they don't know from at least decades ago that loops every 30 seconds? I guess they have nothing better to do with their lives. Boney chases a stink bug into the speaker system, which leads to the sewers of the city. In the arcade is another entrance that the humans can fit through. In the sewer, the group finds something interesting. It's that one guy from Tazmily, the guy who never speaks, is like 20 feet tall and disappeared after a time skip. Letter. He actually begins to speak for once, telling the group something shocking, that Tazmily was all a lie. There used to exist an old world. However, humanity destroyed it. The only place left untouched were the Nowhere Islands, because of the Dark Dragon. the survivors of the old world came to Tazmily to seek out a new life. They were so scared of repeating their past mistakes that they purposely created their village as primitive as they could, while sealing away their past memories into the hummingbird egg. Every part of the Nowhere Island's history was fabricated except for one, Oso Castle. The castle was part of an indigenous culture that existed on the Nowhere Islands a long time ago. However, the previous islanders fled the islands, fearing the dragon's awakening. Kumatora isn't actually a princess. She was part of this wave of settlers. Being an infant around the time, she was chosen to be named a princess to give a false sense of history, with Wes and Duster being her retainers, although that plan didn't really work out that well since she was just kind of forgotten about. All the behaviors of villagers being so easily manipulated, not thinking critically, it's all because of their memories being wiped. Letter was chosen to be insurance, not having his memory erased, to be able to watch over the people. All went well until Porky came along. He gained the ability to travel through time and space, thanks to the technology of Gygus. However, he lost the ability to do so, being trapped during this era. Somehow though, he was able to bring people from all over time to this era to build New Pork along with everything else. He has a powerful ally too, Lorcia, the last Mad Gypsy. Lorcia betrayed their fellow kin, but doesn't know the location of their own needle, other than somewhere nearby. Now, Porky wants to bring destruction on this world again, so it's up to Lucas to put an end to his plans and awaken a dragon with his pure heart. On the way out, Facade tries one last time to get his revenge. This time, he has even more horns on him, and is even more powerful. Again, I find his fate of turning into this really disturbing. Halfway through the fight, he gets his horns broken off, and Facade's heart fills with hatred. I can't be the only one who feels sorry for him, can I? He's been beaten like 3 times now, he's been reduced to this, and now he even gets his last thing going for him broken off. Once defeated, Facade dies for real this time, drowning in sewer water, which is not really the best way to go out. I mean, even if he fell off Thunder Tower and died that way, even if it was like really ironic, that still would have been a better way to go. Before heading to Porky's Tower, this statue mini-boss can be fought, which may seem familiar to Smash fans. There are 2 ways to beat it, either with PK Flash, which is very unlikely to work, or an item called the New Year's Eve Bomb. It drops its HP to 1, allowing you to beat it with a single blow. The Empire Porky building is massive, with 100 floors, the top one being where Porky is. The elevator can't reach the top, so the group has to explore. The rest of DCMC are putting on a concert soon, and they are ecstatic to see Duster again. DCMC throws one last concert, during which the lights go out, and Porky speaks to Lucas, daring him to come to the 100th floor. You go through floor after floor trying to reach him, from water, to bathrooms, to minigames, to a harem room, yeah, don't ask about that one, and a construction site. The tower isn't even fully completed yet. To be fair, the fact that pretty much all of this has been constructed in only a couple of years is still pretty impressive though. Also, Lucas partially gives like half a dozen workers a death sentence by using them as human ropes to walk across ledges. So much for being an innocent cinnamon bun. In one room, what appears to be a pink shell can be found, holding lots of bananas, clothing looking like it belongs to Facade, and lipstick. This can only mean one thing. The last Mad Gypsy was Facade. Apparently, even though he was a cruel maniac to almost everyone, he showed kindness to a mouse that hopes he returns soon. Finally, at long last, you meet with Porky, looking like the same young boy as he was in Earthbound. After everything he's done, he still tries to play all buddy-buddy with Lucas. When Lucas doesn't return his welcome, he blows himself up. When I first saw this scene, I thought, well, that takes care of him. I mean, it's a little anticlimactic. and not realizing that it was obviously just one of his drones until afterwards. A horde of Porkybots have to be dealt with next. When they're beaten, they explode, and they also have a counter for most PSI. If you forget that, enjoy dying. But the four are not alone in their fight against evil. DCMC are the first ones to come to their aid. Then Flint, being the last person to leave Tazmily to come to New Pork, followed by Alec, Wes, Lighter, among others. This only pleases Porky, giving him the audience he wanted. We now finally get to see him. Porky is no longer a young boy, or even mortal for that matter. He has become a shriveled old man, not even being able to move on his own anymore. He is bored of humans destroying themselves and rebuilding over and over again. So now, he seeks of a way to end this cycle once and for all. The final needle is located right below New Pork. Porky, wanting to play games still, helps the group by almost killing them with a 100-story drop. Flint goes ahead to check out what's going on. When the rest of them check up, Flint has been beaten. By who? The Masked Man. And now we finally get to know who he is, Klaus. After all these years, Lucas has found his brother at long last. But why is he working for Porky? Why is he willing to bring destruction on the world? Something has happened to him. He's not the same son Flint once knew. Porky stops the group right before the final needle's resting place, engaging them in battle. This fight is without a doubt among my top 5 favorite boss fights in a series. Lucas finally gets to confront the person who caused all of his suffering, the one behind his mother's death, his brother's corruption, the transformation of Tazmily, and the possible end of the world. The music is even better in my opinion than Porky Means Business, or Pokemon's Business. It's very energetic, but also has this insane undertone that I can't describe. During certain parts of the battle, Porky speaks, mostly about one thing, how he will never die. Even if he somehow winds up beaten, he'll never die. He's traveled through space and time so much that his body no longer ages like a normal human. Even his physical appearance is nonsensical, being both an old man and young boy at the same time. Porky has even lost track of his actual age by a long shot, not even being able to tell the difference between 1,000 years and 10,000. With his immortality, he'll see the world through to its end. However, even still, he'll still be alive. He and a dragon will be the only living things left on Earth. I love how insane Porky has become. You'd expect that he'd have a selfish goal of just ruling the world or something, not just straight up destroying it. He coughs all the time, he thinks Lucas is laughing at him, even the way he talks sounds like he's not really all there anymore. His transformation from a loser at the start of Earthbound to a tyrannical dictator, being able to enact insanely well thought out plans, all to just live forever with no purpose, isn't a plot twist anyone saw coming. Eventually, Porky's spider mech breaks down. Even though he'll never die, he brings out its ultimate weapon, a capsule that is absolutely safe from anything. Porky goes inside, and no matter what the player throws at it, super bombs, PK Starstorm, or PK Love, nothing has any effect on it. But even with Porky safe inside, he's unable to do anything. So by definition, the battle is over. Dr. Andonauts mentions that it's impossible to exit, meaning Porky is stuck in there forever, and since he's immortal, he can never die. He never needs to eat or drink, he can't even move, so Porky gets a fate worse than death, living forever in a cramped space with nothing to do, no one to talk to, being unable to die, unable to move, just stuck, paralyzed, in one spot for all of eternity. Even billions of years later, even after all life on Earth is gone, he'll still be alive, suffering from eternal boredom. I can't say that I don't feel at least a little sorry for him. He had a terrible home life before Earthbound. He never had any of a real friend other than Ness, and his brother Picky was kind of a bit of a jerk to him, and he has no one else who loved him. The series named Mother is what the franchise is all about. It's only fitting that the one person without a real mom is the one who became the most evil. With no time to waste, the four try to catch up to Klaus. When they get there, he's just about to pull the needle. Klaus fires another lightning bolt, once again knocking the rest of the party out, except for Lucas. The two brothers then face off in a fight, with the world at stake. Lucas has to kill his twin, but for some reason, he can't. Klaus sends barrage after barrage of deadly attacks at Lucas. Be sure to have a lot of PP restoring items to heal. It's never stated what exactly Klaus went through to become like this, or even how much of his body is mechanical and how much is organic. But there has to be at least a little piece of him left in there, right? The background and music are horror-esque, otherworldly, and unnerving. Imagine somebody you love disappeared one day, and then the next time you saw them, they ended up like this. Not even showing a hint of their personality or anything. As the fight draws on, a voice can be heard, telling the brothers to stop fighting, the voice of Hinawa. Klaus is unfazed by her voice, and continues to launch deadly attacks at Lucas. As she continues to speak to him, he eventually starts to respond, looking around, but doesn't stop him from hitting Lucas with his most powerful attack, PK Love Omega. Flint finally shows up to the battlefield, getting Lucas out of the way at the risk of his own life. Flint tries to reason with his son, only to have no effect. Klaus launches another PK Love Omega on Flint, leaving him injured to the point of being unable to stand. The player is left wondering if Flint will make it through the fight or not, or if Lucas will lose his entire family. Lucas has already lost his mom. He has to kill Klaus. His father's death on top of that is too much for anyone to bear, let alone a barely teenager. The fight continues. Klaus keeps attacking again and again, while Lucas heals to hold on. Hinawa keeps trying to get to her lost son, but her messages don't seem to be doing anything. Finally, Klaus is hit with something he can't ignore. His and Lucas's first memories, their birth. The love theme starts playing, and we get a scene very much alike to the one in Earthbound, albeit with an entirely different feel. This isn't a nostalgic memory of simpler times, it's a gut punch. Flynn and Hinawa talk about how much they want their boys to be kind, them arguing a lot, them being there for each other. Seeing this after the way things turned out is heartbreaking. This flashback is what finally gets to Klaus. The damage he does to Lucas is significantly reduced from before. He gazes at Lucas. Lucas isn't sure what to do anymore. Klaus covers his ears. He shuts his eyes as he finally starts to realize who he is, as well as what he's doing. Lucas wants to cry. Hinawa tells her son to come to her, remarking about how exhausted he must be. Klaus finally stops attacking at long last. He takes off his mask, revealing a face identical to Lucas's. For some reason, maybe it's because of guilt, or maybe it's a mechanism inside of him from Porky, he fires a powerful lightning bolt at Lucas, but the Franklin badge deflects back at him, causing his death. For the first time in years, the twins embrace each other. He apologizes to his brother and dies in his arms. Flint, Kumatora, Boney, and Duster gather around as he gives his final breath. As devastating as this day has been, Lucas still has to do what he came here for, to pull the needle, to awaken a dragon, to pass his gentle nature onto it, and to rebuild the world. After much anticipation, Lucas pulls it, finally freeing the dragon from its long slumber. What happens next is something a bit unexpected. Instead of a happy, everything's gonna be okay from here on out kind of ending, the world begins to be destroyed. Chimers begin to panic, meteors crash down, tornadoes roam the land, and the earth begins to crack open. Oso Castle falls inside the earth. Even the pig mask can't escape this event, and the last thing we actually see in Mother 3 is a black island in a sea of whirlpools. The end. Now, there's one question you may be wondering. What the hell was that? What kind of sick ending was that? That's at least what I thought for a long time. But now I know more context, and I'm a little more accepting of it. For one, everyone survived. If you walk around, you can hear various characters speak, thanking the player. Why is the screen all black though? Well, a toy wanted the game's ending to be whatever the player wanted it to be. Whether that was dark, a happy ending where Klaus and Hinawak came back to life, or anything else. Initially, this last part wasn't even going to be in the game. The only reason it was added is to give the audience at least a little bit of closure. And that was Mother 3, a masterpiece of epic measures, an emotional story, relatable characters, dark moments perfectly mixed with lighthearted ones, fun gameplay, and a hell of a conclusion. Mother 3 is definitely worth playing if you haven't played it yet. Even if you don't like to play emulated games on PC, the fan translation has been ported to regular GBA carts as well, which is what I went with for this video. The story of the game's creation is such a shame. From the scale back of the initial massive vision, the cancellation of Earthbound 64, and its ultimate Japan-only status. During the course of this video, I've grown to like Mother 3 a lot more than I previously did. I still like Earthbound more, but this playthrough, honestly, has been the most fun of the three. It's jumped up to among my top 5 favorite games of all time at the moment, just behind Majora's Mask. If I had to grant one Mother game the title of best overall from a more objective standpoint, Mother 3 would probably get that honor. It's been quite the emotional journey for me, reminding me so much of my own life, and like I said before, this is the first time that it's been comforting to me instead of depressing. Everyone, well, if you don't take things for granted is all I'm gonna say. Tell people how much you love them, go spend some time with them, thank them for what they've done. I wish I could do the same. Anyway, thank you Atoy for making the series. Please translate this game, Nintendo, and play the game. I have some other Mother videos I made, go check those out as well. And thank you all for watching. This has been Alpha Leaf Gaming.